welcome to the March Steering Committee meeting of Community Board 7. We do not have a quorum, but we are not therefore going to vote unless we have another member or two who come during the course of the meeting, but we will discuss the items on our agenda. So first, I would like to adopt the agenda, the very generic agenda that we had posted. So
there's our quorum.
Well, you can adopt the agenda.
Sure.
Okay.
No objection.
No objections. Okay. So I wanted to let folks know, and Max will circulate much more detailed information as the month goes forward, that our next full board meeting is going to be at Goddard Riverside. And that's a new venue for us, and we're very happy that they were able to accommodate us. It is not inexpensive. On the other hand, we made it work. So that would be nice to have a new spot.
It's a new old spot.
A new old spot.
We meet there all the time.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we're always there, yeah.
So there are two items that are ones I'd like to have some conversation about this evening. One is reviving our social media presence, and the other is addressing board attendance issues. So first, I'd like to give Max an opportunity to give his district manager's report.
Great, thanks. Very short. Although I think Barbara broke the news earlier, Trisha Shimamura is leaving, as you mentioned. She's going to be the Manhattan Parks Deputy Commissioner, I think, or
No,
Commissioner.
in her last email, she said the commissioner.
Yeah.
Wow. A big deal.
Exactly,
Yeah.
it is.
Wow.
So we're happy to have worked with her in one capacity and we'll be seeing her in another. Several of you have been asking, and interviews are currently being conducted for board member appointments. At this point, especially given Trisha's departure, and she mentioned the timeline was going to be a little bit delayed, I wouldn't expect new board members to surface on our shores until well into April at this point. I think.
Right?
Yeah. And if they told you May, then probably told us later the due dates. Because I know a lot of you have been eager and asking me.
Hi, Natasha.
Um,
Just maybe pull up another chair.
I can feel it.
Okay. Thank you for coming. We now have a quorum.
And then the only other thing I have is a thank you to Alex Bell, who's not here, but he tested out the OWL cameras at a transportation meeting recently. And looks like it could be a useful improvement. We may eventually go in that direction. We're going to do a little bit more experimentation.
What is that?
These ones, there's two of them.
Two
You'll
of
see.
them.
And if you want to see how they functioned, I think it's the transportation meeting. You could watch on YouTube.
They swivel to whoever's
Yeah.
talking.
Oh.
And actually, the audio was a little improved too, is some of the feedback I got from some of the folks that were joining
Yeah.
on Zoom. So we're gonna have more updates on that, but it might be the direction that we eventually head to. And that's it for my report. I know we have a couple great things on the new business.
Okay, so Alex Bell and Elizabeth Caputo have expressed an interest in working on developing our social media, which has been really dormant for several years now. Part of that was clearly COVID, but also the fact that the office cannot routinely post. That's not something they have time to do. And we need really our board members to take that on as they did, as Elizabeth was telling me back at the very beginning when the first efforts in that direction were made. So what I'm asking is for the two of them to jointly lead a task force on essentially social media development. This would not be a task force that meets regularly, but as I see it more as an organizing structure for those interested in volunteering or submitting suggestions, they know where to go. And this gives it a little legitimacy if it is a task force. Alex could not be here tonight, but I would like to ask Elizabeth to provide some details on their preliminary conversations and planning.
Sure, yeah, thanks, Beverly, good to see everyone. This is something, I guess, going back for many of you to 2010, 2011. And when social media had long been on the game, but like we hadn't really done anything at MCB7. And one of my first projects that I worked on was actually helping to get our social media channels up and running. We had a lot of discussions, and I think one of the things that is going to be particularly important is for committee chairs to be involved in this process. We came down, this was again 10, 12 years ago, came down on using social media more as a communications tool. So a way to get out factual information about our meetings, not to blog, not to have personal opinions, not to post other people's or political events, but to just be like something that could be used. Now, obviously, you know, Alex and I have talked and things have changed dramatically in the last, even in the last 2 years, I would argue, in terms of how and who and what people use for social media. And we thought it would be a good time for sort of a refresh on that and to try to put Community Board 7 like ahead of the curve, or at least at the curve as opposed to behind it. Again, the primary purpose, one of the primary purposes being now that we are doing meetings in person again, trying to use social media tools as a way to gin up attendance, not to substitute for people getting news after the fact about what we do, but actually to be able to come and you know, find out where the meetings are and so forth. I think there are plans, and Alex has some great ideas about moving forward. But you know, you guys all saw how great he was with getting our voting done, you know, by phone. He has a lot of great ideas about things that could improve efficiencies, hopefully make the board office's life easier, make the committee chairs' lives easier. And but to do this, we really want to have not just the board members involved, and the staff obviously I think needs to be very involved in sort of weighing in on what they think is important, because you're here every day, you know what works and what doesn't. But to try to remove the onus from an already stretched board staff to us to a certain degree. Could I just finish? Yeah.
I'm hearing feedback from the screen. Is it possible to mute it? Oh. Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess just the final thing on this was we also really want to have the community at large involved, or at least I personally would like to know what's going to make somebody from the neighborhood want to come to one of our meetings, or how they want to get informed about our meetings. And so we hope that these, if we do meet as a task force, you know, even if it's just a couple of times over the course of the next year, to really try to involve the community at some level, but also just the board and the board staff. So I mean, we don't really have, I think we're planning to talk about this over the course of the next week, but you know, I envision maybe us either reporting back to steering at some point in the next couple of months before the summertime, maybe, just with sort of the plan, have you guys decide. And if any of you as committee chairs, I mean, obviously you talk to Alex or me, or if, I don't know, agenda wise tonight, if anyone has any questions or thoughts. But
Yeah, are there questions or thoughts that you want to express now? Anyone?
Yeah, I was just wondering when you and Alex met, I think it's a great idea in terms of enhancing the board's social media presence. Has there been any discussion as far as best practices that have been used by other community boards and kind of adopting the best from the city?
yeah, I mean, it's one of the things I hoped. I'm not sure if the borough president's office has like a standard, or like I don't think they do. So I think it's really up to us, just like most things within the tech world. It's like up to us to sort of use it or lose it, figure out how we want to do it. But I do remember, I think some things haven't changed. I know that 10 years ago, one of the big concerns was, you know, who's going to monitor, for instance, our Facebook page. We decided to leave the Facebook page sort of very static and posting. We didn't, and then, but invariably you have people who will tweet at us or post something on the Facebook page. And there was a whole discussion amongst the board members about how and when, like, what are the best practice, like, when should we respond, or should we respond? Should we just leave it at, because on the one hand, we don't want to engage people, but it's being engaged in a negative way. But we also have a responsibility to get the word out about things and be responsive. And so I think one of the things that came up with the board staff in particular was, if we deputized, I think we deputized at the time our John Martinez, who many of you remember, is our deputy district manager. And it was a lot. It was a lot for him to have to take on. And so eventually we sort of moved to a model where it was like, okay, we're going to keep it sort of just informational for now. And I'm open to making it, more interactive, but I think that with that comes a lot more responsibilities that are going to be incumbent upon either us or the board staff to handle.
And when you were chair, you started communications committee.
Right.
And we had a Twitter account, an Instagram account, and a Facebook account. And each of the members of the committee would post things that the chairs asked us to.
Yeah.
I think just from my conversation with Alex, he thinks that starting with Instagram is probably the best. It has fewer downside possibilities
Okay, right.
than Facebook or
TikTok.
X.
So would things be sent to you or Alex, and then you would post them? You, the two of you would decide what was.
So I think that process is, to your point, is
To be
is
developed.
to be developed.
Yeah.
Because there's, I mean, it's a lot, it gets thorny, and we don't want to be creating more work for the committee chairs or creating more work for the board
Yeah.
offices, but we also, there will be a little bit of it, like just if you want people to come to your meetings, you're gonna
Yeah.
need to get stuff posted. And we went back and forth on having like who was actually going to do the posting, right? So I think it went through the communications committee and they sent stuff to you rather than giving like basically the full board, or at least most of the committee chairs access, because Andrew.
Pre-COVID, when we were on social media, do you recall what the ratio was between people looking at that to find out about us or our website? Do you recall that?
I think the website is still
Amazing.
We did not have very many followers.
Okay.
But
right, but we
that's what
want
I
to get
recall.
them, we want to get more so that they can use the site. But again, a lot of the things on social media, what we would do is we would link them to the website. Like basically the best possible place you can go for information about CB7 is always going to be the website. And then, sort of channel factual information there.
Thank you.
Well, I would like to volunteer to be on the task force if I don't already have enough stuff on my plate as it is. But I have just hearing you speak and hearing everyone else speak, I have a lot of things running through my head.
Yeah.
That's the noise I'm hearing.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking, and I feel like this is a conversation for the task force, on ways to use other platforms that we haven't even considered.
Yes.
So things like Twitch, which is gamer specific, but there's a lot of people who use that casually for chats. Live music production, like small groups who are trying to promote themselves. I also just think that's a way for us to reach a younger audience. Twitch is another way for us just to live stream. We live stream through YouTube. We also could live stream through Instagram. I'm sure you know that. So I'm just also thinking beyond just posts, how we can just have our reach out there. But I'll love to be a part. Yeah.
I think that you've now made that point, and I think
Yeah.
that they will pounce on you.
Yeah, sure. I'm with it.
Look, I'm all for the new ideas. I think we want to be, what we want to do is we want to go out with this and hit the things that we know we can hit out of the park and perfect those.
Yeah.
While also making sure that we, like you said, we do want to bring in new people. And if it's a tool that can help do that, I think there are ways we can look at it. What we sort of don't want, or we don't want it to substitute for the actual, like we don't want people not coming to a meeting and going on,
see what you're saying.
Twitch,
Yeah.
communicating
That
with
makes
each
sense.
other about board business rather than doing it at a meeting where they could be, talking to the board itself. And so it's a fine line, but but yeah, I mean, I remember even when we were trying to live stream our meetings 12 years ago. I mean, I feel like we've come a long way as a board, so like congratulations on that. But I remember it was, people had reservations even about live streaming because they were like, I mean, they're public meetings. I was sort of the one back then who was like, they're public meetings. We should be able to like live stream them, you know? So things like that aren't a huge thing. I think it just a lot of it does come down to the maintenance and the monitoring, and you know, people are not, people like expressing their opinions in this neighborhood, and how we do it in a way that adheres to our core principles and is responsible and support.
I think that's another hands down.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, thanks. What was I gonna say? I think some of you guys might remember we had Ashley Lopez on staff for 4 or 5 months, and I think her graduate degree was actually in social media marketing. So we started down this path a little bit, and what we tried to do at that time was emulate what some of the other boards were doing. But it really didn't net out because a lot of the other boards also didn't really have really interesting or engaging or contemporary social media posts. So what I'm hoping that this does is kind of retakes a brand new, refreshed look at this. Like a lot of other boards are just basically posting Canva posts announcing meetings, and I think it's got to be some sort of different style engagement, and maybe it's a good point for everyone to come join the first meeting of the task force whenever we have that, to all hands on deck and come up with some new ideas.
Right.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I appreciate that you saying early on that we're gonna try to make it as objective as possible, as opposed, you know, that it shouldn't be politicizing something. If there are issues that are polarizing, come to the meeting. Right, but it's not, hey, this is one side of it, the other. It should really just be about populating, getting the message out, getting the message in. And I think another way that people that are much smarter than me in the social media world know about, you know, capitalizing on other people's accounts that have so many more followers, such as elected officials and other people that may, like, for example, Gail's newsletter, sometimes she'll mention our meeting. Right, and I think a lot of people find out about our meeting through her newsletter, and that's fairly static. But if one of our elected officials also, I'm going to use the word retweet or tag.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's another way to drive traffic back.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think the one thing about elected officials that we need to be a little bit careful of, and I noticed it was on the website. I haven't gone to the CB7 website in a long time, and when I looked at it, it had, you know, some dated elected officials, and at least one of them, it went to their campaign website.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that was just probably a type, you know,
It
somebody.
doesn't now.
What?
It doesn't now.
It doesn't now?
No, now
It doesn't, yeah, but my point is just that, like, and I think we want to avoid, I don't want to make any blanket statements here, but I think we do want to err on the side of, like, we don't want the site to be, our social media to be used to post other people's events, whether it's an elected official or a group. It's more like
Information.
and we want to put, no, I don't even know if it's that. I mean, I think we need to have discussion about whether the purpose of our social media effort is to promote other people's events, or if it is to promote our events. You
Give
know,
and take them, right?
yeah.
If you,
So
I would say.
Yeah.
all
But
of
it's tough.
these
Those are all-
questions are.
yeah, I mean, this wasn't meant for, like,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
but they're all really good points that everyone's raising, and
I really appreciate the conversation. Just one thing, if this is to be actually a real task force under the definition in our bylaws, we need to vote. And that will enable it to exist for 1 year until we may vote again, or it will have completed its job.
Make a resolution.
So
Thank you.
moved.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations.
I mean, you got your hand raised.
Yeah, I was wondering, I mean, do we want to do, so obviously we can do, you know, we can post an agenda for a committee meeting and, you know, a location and stuff. Do you want to do like a summary of the meeting, like afterwards saying,
But that's what we already basically now have on YouTube.
okay,
So, you know,
I think he meant like a shorthand.
like a short,
30
like a
second,
tweet, like a tweet saying, you know, here, we talked about these 5 things, we voted on a resolution that didn't pass.
Come see us. at full
Yeah,
board
something like
April. Yeah.
just like a factual, here's what happened, you know. We had quorum, we voted on these 2 things, here's what happened, and we're gonna you know, so-and-so's gonna draft a resolution, or, you know, leave it at that, or, you know, so-and-so came and presented. Here's a link to the website and, you know,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a
Right,
great
so-
idea. I think the question then becomes like, who
who writes
takes
that.
on that, would do it, the secretary's responsibility to do that, like at the end of the meeting, in addition to doing the minutes, do they
Yeah.
do the write-up that gets and then posted?
You-
Or-
that
Yeah, those are things.
Maintaining becomes a
Yeah,
huge.
it's a lot of work.
We'll just use AI.
Anyways,
Can I just,
go ahead.
Natasha.
Natasha.
before we move on, I guess my comments are not that new. I have actually mixed feelings about social media. Maybe I'm in the minority over here. But I would just, the one thing I would advocate for is not to create more work for either the co-chairs or the office staff. Because we're all volunteers here and the office staff is already, they have a lot going on. So, a lot of times I myself am guilty of like making requests to them, like literally at the last minute before a meeting. So, in my mind, if they have to take care of social media also, that's a heavy load to lift, because sometimes I go on social media and I see kind of a static website or a static Instagram page, and it frankly looks bad. It kind of reflects poorly on the organization, that why do they even have this page if they can't even maintain it? So it's kind of off-putting for me. So just to think about that. And then I think we're all aware of or have been victims of like the wrong kind of engagement from the public, where, I see a lot of comments on issues that have been discussed in our meetings, our committee meetings, and then people who won't come to engage with us in the office, they'll comment in the local press. And it's very toxic and demoralizing, and I don't want another outlet for that, frankly, for the sake of my own mental health, So those are things to keep in mind, and I will frankly just say that I have mixed feelings. I'm not as excited as some other people.
Understood, no.
I think all of those things that's why we're saying this is a development process, and all of these considerations. If you have specific thoughts, ideas, reach out to Alex or to Elizabeth with them, and
Or a mental health professional.
Can I just add one super quick point?
sure.
If I remember correctly from my time having a task force, we can actually have members who are not part of the board. So we can have public.
Yeah.
That means if we do feel stress, we can rely on the public. I think we also can give students opportunity. Maybe there's some way of community service engagement in our board. I remember in 10th grade, I had to do community service. Use the Museum of Natural History, it was great. So just something to consider, that task force, we can get outside help, and who better knows social media than kids? That's all.
Good thought.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. So the second matter that I wanted your input on is attendance. We last fall, I did a scan of all the attendance, and there were about 6 or 7 people who were either at or a little bit over our bylaw standard of 6 absences within 12 months. Wrote to all of them personal emails. A number of things arose from that. Some people were not aware of the fact that they were over that amount. They don't think that way. They weren't tracking it. And several people actually resigned because it gave them an opportunity to think through whether or not they had time to serve, and they determined that they really did not. So it was an interesting experiment. I started doing that again. And so looked at the office's information around attendance. We currently have 12 members who have exceeded the limit in the bylaws. That's a pretty huge.
That is
Just for this year?
Yeah.
For the last 12 months, because the language
Oh, right.
in the bylaws is a rolling 12-month snapshot, right?
You haven't communicated with those folks yet.
I have emailed several. The ones sort of that started at the top end and it was going to work down. But this is not sustainable. I know there exists at least one Manhattan Community Board where it's automatic. You hit whatever standard is in their bylaws and you exceed it, there's an automatic vote and you're expelled from the board. And it's just like that, that's their culture. They're used to doing that. I think that is not where this board's feelings and culture are. I think we're in a different place about how we feel about our members and the sympathy we may have for some who have reasons why they cannot come. But then the question is, what is the meaning of what we put as a standard? And what do we do if there are 12 people who have exceeded that standard, right? Now, what I learned by the first round of communications last fall is there are some people who had specific things going on in life that were finite, have ended, and I have every reason to believe that going forward, their attendance will be much better and that they will be that important and valid members of this board. There are others who have not necessarily changed in terms of their behavior. I need some input into what we think is an appropriate way of proceeding. I have a proposal of at least a couple measures that make a dent in this issue, and would love to hear, is there a consensus around that or
Can we
around
just
something
find
else?
out from an informational point of view?
Right.
When you say they haven't attended, that means not virtually and not in person, correct?
Correct.
And is that full board and committee?
Yes.
And what about this? Is people not here, Ken?
Since we passed a change in our bylaws in the fall for this committee, if there is one co-chair, the other is not marked absent. We made that change because it didn't make a lot of sense, since this is essentially a planning meeting to pull together for the next board. So those do not count as absences. All right. But if you're not attending a committee meeting, you haven't got a waiver to attend virtually, and you don't show up in person, then you are marked absent. And for full board, you know, the secretaries are very careful and take attendance, and we have sign-in sheets. And we also have, you know, before they're adopted, the minutes which have the attendance on them are sent out to everybody in their board packet, right? So that they can review and you can look, are you marked absent? Is that correct? Are you can complain. And we have had points where somebody said, I was there, and we've checked, and yes, in fact, there was a change. So you have a fail-safe in those instances. So we're talking about places or people for whom none of that applies, right?
That other question.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm not going to a meeting, I let the chair know that I'm not attending.
And there are many who do that. There are many who do not.
So do we know if people that aren't coming to meetings have failed to tell the chair that they're not coming?
I think that is frequently the case. I don't know I know for full board, but I do not know for each committee the status of the information that the co-chairs receive.
It's one of the people who takes minutes of the attendance. The most difficult thing is when people get a waiver from Beverly or the chair, and they, well, from Beverly in this instance. And then they fail to appear on screen.
Right.
And occasionally somebody is there for 5 minutes and then they disappear for 45 minutes. And, you know, sometimes it's like Alex and I we don't know what to do. You know, it's just really difficult. And other times it's just really clear. This person asked for a waiver, but we never saw this person the whole night. So, yeah.
I had a suggestion as far as a potential.
Okay. Let me put forward what I've
Okay,
thought of
sure.
and then tear it apart and make your own. How's that?
Sure.
What I thought of was, I would ask, this is additional work for our office, but Max has expressed a willingness to do it and believes it can be accommodated, that every month when we complete this attendance, the week after full board for the prior month, that for those who have exceeded the 6-month limit, I'm sorry, the 6 absence limit within the last 12-month period, they get an email saying, for your information. So this idea of, well, I had no idea, I didn't know, at least that piece is taken care of. I think that would be helpful. I also think that if we watch the attendance over a period of several months, and people in that category continue to be absent on a fairly regular basis, or show no improvement in the way the data looks, that those people should be referred to the executive committee, because that's what our bylaws provides for some disposition, whatever that may be. And it could be many possibilities. Could be it could be asking the person to appear before the executive committee. It could be a motion of censure. It could be a variety of things. But at least it would give meaning to what the bylaws say is the responsibility of every board member.
We bash them on the new social media platform.
So those are 2 thoughts of things that could be done. And I think Will got his hand in first, but then Roberta.
My first thought is more of a backup plan that the Manhattan Borough President can do for us. As of, I had my interview on Sunday, and there was a lot of people for interviews, and we're gonna select our people. I think we should have some standby people. So in addition to who are their top 12, whatever the seats were, they should have on file who so happened didn't get to make the cut. And so that if we need to fill spots, we can fill them up, and we're not down to 47 votes for a month or 34 votes for a month. That for every seat that we have is filled, and if someone's attendance doesn't show improvement after conversation, after going through executive committee, they have to be removed. We have someone that's listed and approved by the borough president that can be called on.
It's a little more complicated because a large 50% of our membership must be recommended by a council member and then appointed by the borough president. So we'd have to engage a lot of different folks in those in making that work. Roberta.
We're all grown-ups, and I know if I miss a meeting, I just can't imagine that people don't know they've missed 6 meetings. So I would suggest that if people have missed 4 meetings, that they be contacted and told that they've missed, an email, doesn't have to be a phone call, that they've missed 4 meetings, and then our bylaws state that if you miss 6 meetings, such and such and such, and see how they react.
Well, I know how certain people have reacted because of my first round with this.
Right, but I think if you do it after, if I've missed 4 meetings, and I haven't, if I've called you and said,
even to start at 6, because if it's 4, you're sending emails to.
at 6, I should be off. I mean, personally, my feeling is, unless I have extenuating circumstances that I've communicated this with you or with Max, I should resign from the board. If I can't make my required meetings, then I personally would resign from the board.
It's an empty seat. Even if you're still on the board, you don't show up as an empty seat.
Exactly.
Well, it's not only an empty seat, it means that the work of the board, the real work of the board.
Right. It might
Ends
not
up
make-
having to
committee
be
might not
done
make
by a
difference.
smaller number of people. The research of topics, the inviting of guests, the writing of resolutions, all of what constitutes our real work is crammed into a relatively much smaller portion of our so-called 50-member board. Yeah.
I completely agree with Roberta. I think that if you get onto a community board, when there are so many people who want to be, especially on our community board, and you don't do what you're supposed to do. I mean, if you're seriously ill, and you cannot attend meetings, that's a different story. And we should probably address that separately, but if it's just capricious reasons why you're not at a meeting, we have to assume that some people just think it looks good on their resume and they don't really have any intention of putting in the work.
I'm just curious, what kind of response are you getting? I'm not asking for names, obviously, but I'm just like, what are people being adversarial with you or they're
On
fighting with?
occasion.
Yeah, I'm just curious, like,
On occasion, some have.
as a how dare you question their commitment to the board? Or
No, basically, I didn't know, I'd hear the reasons why I didn't attend, and, among those reasons might be something like, well, I could see from the agenda it was gonna be a boring meeting.
so this is more of just not being responsibility.
Right. Yes.
So now you get to choose your meetings.
Right. Then they shouldn't be on the board then.
Yeah.
They don't have a commitment to the cause.
And how can you possibly
I've
know
had,
what's
I've
gonna
had some
rise
people
at a meeting?
who really took the communication to heart
Right, I'm sorry.
as well,
Mhm.
so I don't want to.
No, I was
But
just
there,
curious.
it's all over the, and there are people who view any approach on this subject to them as my singling them out
Right.
or because I don't like them.
Right.
And I'm trying to come up with a process that
Yeah.
essentially makes it clear this is a universal policy. Yeah.
I agree with a lot of things that were said here and, and I like what Roberta said, we are all grown-ups here. But we do sometimes live in the land of the gray, right? There is discretion and there's context and, Barbara mentioning someone who is ill cannot attend is very different than someone who says the meeting's too boring. Radically different, but there's so many life circumstances that can come up and some are temporary, as you mentioned, and some are more chronic or permanent. So, and also I really do believe that a lot of this happens to fall on steering committee's discretion, chair's discretion, to put things into context. What is the tenure of the person? What is their contribution up to this point? Is it temporary? Is it permanent? Is it, and so I'm kind of saddened to the fact that we don't have an official leave of absence anymore.
Yeah.
And I understand why, and I agree that we have a lot of work to do. And I'm thinking about when I was an employee at a hotel and, if somebody doesn't come in, you increase the workload on everyone around you. And that's really important context. And one of the things that was a absolute, when I worked for hotels, no call, no show was a cardinal sin. And if you didn't show, you had a certain number of hours in coming before a meeting, but if you didn't even call to say you weren't coming, that was an automatic write up to a very high degree. Different than, so anyway, I just would like to consider the world of the gray here and discretion and
Yeah,
I don't
no,
know what I'm saying.
And I agree that among this 12, there are, probably at least 50% are people that have what I would consider important reasons for what has happened in the past, and I would not view them as in any way
Do they
less
communicate
committed.
those with you?
Hmm?
Do they communicate those with you beforehand?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
Paternity, maternity, bereavement, are those qualifying?
We
or-
have a part of our bylaws that talks about excused absences. But our understanding from the borough president is that they do not consider those valid because they view sort of, we have a certain number we wrote into our bylaws as our standard, and those are your days of, your paid absent bank or something,
Right.
we can,
When,
and then if you get much beyond that, for whatever reason, you're essentially not fulfilling your obligation as a board member, right?
when somebody doesn't show up for a meeting and has not communicated with either co-chair, do the co-chairs then communicate with you to let you know this has happened, or does the staff let you know this has happened?
I see it in the attendance, right? Which the co-chairs give to the office. And the office posts, right? So I see it there, but I don't know the circumstances, whether it was someone who said, you know, I have a meeting that has just been called and I can't get out of it, or, you know, whether it's somebody who just doesn't show.
Moving forward, are we gonna create a new standard as far as educating our new board members on what our policy looks like?
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking about setting them up for success.
And reminding the old members.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm trying to assume positive intent in the absence. Maybe it's just me always trying to find the good in everything, even in things I disagree with. But I'm trying to understand how this can happen, right? So there's probably a lack of knowledge, really understanding that you have to come here for all the meetings, full board and your 2 committee meetings. So I'm wondering how we can create a standard in educating or addressing what is required. And, you know, I don't know, that's just moving forward, how we're gonna set them up for success, I would say.
Can I just ask a quick question about this? The borough president does not have a requirement, like when we filled out our applications for reapplication, it did not give us like, you must be at full board, you know, the requirements for joining this board are as follows, right?
My understanding is that when they accept the applications of board members they are appointing, there is some forum where they do talk about that.
Okay, because I guarantee, like, when we sat through that, you said there were so many people on your call on Sunday, right? Like, I guarantee if like Eric Cueto had said at the beginning, like, you can spare yourselves the next 2 hours. If you're not gonna be able to be at these meetings every month to count for a vote,
Yeah.
don't even bother. So
Yeah.
The only thing he mentioned at the end of the meeting on Sunday was that if you, he said, if you did not enjoy this experience, debating and having discourse, and this is not for you, and I'm gonna be here if you wanna tell me that, or just reach out. But you're right, that wasn't brought up, but I don't know. It's
I don't think
that
it's
letter,
stressed
the
enough,
first letter, it definitely says that you are required
Required,
to
yeah.
attend full board and
Right.
They
minimum
can't
of 2
possibly know
committees.
every individual community board's,
Yeah,
you know, process as far as attendance goes, but
Yeah, and different boards have different standards, so. In fact, ours is pretty high. compared
Yeah.
to
Because
some
it feels like
others.
our full boards
Yeah.
are very rarely over 40 people. Does that seem accurate to everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
You know, because like when we had last was 38 was.
Yeah, it's usually like in the high
seems to be like
30s.
that.
That went down.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you
I mean,
think
this is
about
another-
Well, it's high.
I get that.
statistically though, if like 5 or 6 people are gonna have extenuating circumstances for any given meeting, right? So I guess that would mean we should expect somewhere between around 45 people to be there, right?
Right, but that's 10% versus 20%.
Yeah,
And-
yeah.
and 12 is high, cause I wonder if it's increased since going in person. I can't tell you how many times during COVID that I saw an email that reminded me I had a meeting. I was like, oh, thank God, not that I would forget, but it was just a nice email saying you have a Zoom link, you have a meeting, tonight. So I wonder if that,
I mean, but people have to
Contributed
take personal
to-
responsibility.
yeah.
But if you miss a committee meeting, I mean, there have been committee meetings where they barely had a quorum, but it's an important vote.
Yeah.
And you can't vote at the meeting.
Well, I had my interview on Friday and there was 90 some odd people on that borough president call, and there were at least 7 applicants for CB7, I believe, on that.
We
Yeah.
had how many last night? It was tons.
As Eric told me, recently, that as every year, our community board had more applications by far than any other in Manhattan. So,
Do you think it would help if they, as they're going through the screening process for like, because 7 has so many applications, it probably won't matter, but like having whoever is reviewing, because I know they said on the call yesterday, they said, well, your council member or the borough president's office may call you for.
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
To just reiterate it to them, like, hey, just FYI, are you committed to be, like, I don't know if that will help or not for everyone, but just to reinforce
I
that.
heard
but
that.
I've got to say, it isn't only, the list of 12 does not consist of only newish members.
No.
You should be aware of.
Yeah.
There's folks who ought to know better who are on that list, so, but yeah.
I was just going to add that, there are people, like Beverly said, with extenuating circumstances, those are legitimate. I think we're more focused on the people that just blatantly are pretty much all but rolled off on their own. In fact, in one instance, there's even a board member right now that didn't even realize they're up for reappointment. They still don't know. And even after our office sent emails, our president's office did, they still don't know. And at that point, I wasn't going to go out of my way to remind them because they don't belong here.
Great. Yep.
And so they're not going to be reappointed, and they don't even know that right now.
But if they never come, I don't think it matters.
But I think there's also gonna be people resenting the fact that some people seem to get away with.
Well,
If you're
Yeah,
attending every meeting and being very,
but Doug's point about, it's supposed to be tempered with mercy and with an understanding of individual circumstances, that essentially means you can't have a ironclad policy
No,
that you're enforcing on everyone.
I think the idea of bringing people to the executive committee allows that gray area, right? The committee can
The
still
steering
have a
committee.
conversation, say why it's happening and you can make a determination based on the individual circumstance.
And then sadly, you're always gonna have people who always gonna feel slighted because for whatever reason.
right, at the last minute, your boss says you have to work late. So you can't, I can't get on Zoom, so.
Well, when new appointments and reappointments are finalized and they get here, this is a great opportunity to remind everybody what the attendance requirements are. What to do if you can't make a meeting, if it happens at the last minute, how you get in touch with one of the co-chairs or something.
Yeah, that's right.
I think if we're talking about to a point of extreme where someone is about to, that we're gonna recommend or as a steering committee or otherwise that this person be removed. I guess that probably does go to a vote, and then we have a democratic process and people feel that they want to make an exception for an individual, or they have an opportunity to make their own case and say this is why. And right, I mean, I think that's sort of called for in our bylaws that
Right.
we have a process.
due process.
In the past, we have voted a couple of board members off because their attendance is so bad. We've also recommended to the borough president that certain people not be reappointed because they missed, 12, 13 meetings.
And in the past, we also approved people's leave of absences, even, as long as it's a while back.
But this was
But yeah,
while we were approving people's leave of absences, they would still, I missed a steering meeting. I let Beverly know in advance that I couldn't be there, but, and I don't have a co-chair, so right now, so that means it affects the board.
We'll get you a co-chair.
Actually, well, I had a co-chair.
We're gonna co-chairs to us.
I had a co-chair, the co-chair unfortunately had to leave the board because business was just, interfering with the tenants. But
We'll get you another one. Okay, I think we sort of run down, do I sense a consensus around a notification email? I think we start with maybe 6 or above, because I have mercy on our poor office. They don't want to go out with a gazillion of these emails every month.
Just a question, Beverly. You said 6 was the limit.
6 is good, 7 is bad.
So maybe you don't think before 6 is a better time to.
Well,
notify
at 6, you
people,
could
like
say you're at
4
your
or
limit.
5?
why don't you do it at 5?
I just think that's right now, that will be too big a burden. Because it would sweep up too many board members. I think as we begin to, and I would send around some sort of email announcing this change. And maybe that will make everyone a little more conscious of.
Just that, just to quickly, not to create more work for anybody, definitely, but when you say it would sweep up a lot of board members, maybe that's the goal.
Beverly, if there's a consensus,
no,
I'm fine doing, if there's a consensus, I'm fine, that's fine.
Isn't there some tech
Goal of
that
the role.
allow you to sort of?
Yes, I was just thinking, there's gotta be a way for this to be automated, where somehow, some way, it's input in some data sheet, the data sheet automatically shows it hits a threshold, the threshold then sends an email, the email then goes out. There's that's
Yeah,
gotta
yeah.
exist.
Alex can write
We
it.
need Alex.
Yeah.
Okay, let's figure that one out, but initially, we will start in that way, and I will at our next executive committee meeting go into more detail on the people who've hit that mark already, and my guess is there will be one or two perhaps that they will want to pursue some action. Okay, so committee reports quickly. Parks, Natasha.
Yes, parks. So next month we have two items. They are not resolution dependent, they're just updates. One is from the Broadway Mall Association, something to do with their a new public art project that's coming up on the Broadway malls. And the other one is from DPR. Matt Genrich wanted to come in and I can talk about summer volunteer opportunities. And I have reached back out to both of them to confirm with them that they're coming. They haven't responded to me.
To full board or to?
No,
To
to
the
our
next
committee meeting.
And the one you had yesterday was 2 updates as well.
Two updates, and so we
yeah.
don't have anything to bring to
Okay.
full board.
Okay. Thank you. I listened in. I thought it was a very interesting presentation on the office building as part of the
doghouse.
doghouse.
Yeah.
Not much new information.
Not much new, but everyone was very pleased that they're back at a single story
Oh,
rather
God,
than
yes.
2 stories. Housing and land use.
Right here.
Right there.
Tomorrow is our meeting. We have a representative who's going to come present about the community land trusts. And how that can, work as a way of preserving affordable housing, and allowing for, the public ownership of land and development of housing. We also are going to discuss borough president's housing agenda for Albany for the state budget. And hopefully we can we can agree that we support it, or at least most of it. And then, put out a resolution, ahead of, as the state budget is due on April 1st, and they're in heavy negotiations about that. And because Beverly pointed out, because in our district needs, affordable housing is one of our top items. We can put out a letter of support for his agenda without having to have a full board vote. So after the meeting tomorrow, we'll come to a consensus on what we want to support within that housing agenda, and then we'll put out a letter of support. Another thing is, as you know, I had reached out to all of the tenant leaders at all of the public housing facilities in the district. Have not gotten great responses, but today I did speak with the tenant person at Wise Towers. Holly Spain set that conversation up. He spoke today at noon. Him and I are going to, he wants to meet face to face, so him and I are going to have dinner a couple weeks on April 3rd, I believe. So some progress. But yeah, we forget who got the emails, but we got emails of all the tenant leaders at all the facilities, and I emailed them all. Only got responses from a couple of them, but I'm continuing to reach out to them and just trying to, the ask was, let us know how we can help, and if you'd like to come speak at a meeting, a housing committee meeting, you have the floor. Just let us know when you want to come. The third Wednesday of the month, and just whenever you'd like to come speak, you can. So we'll continue to do that outreach.
So a letter, but no resolution for April.
Correct.
Right, good.
Correct.
Okay. Will, Health and Human Services.
Health and Human Services. Our March HHS meeting is scheduled for next Tuesday, March 26th. So we begin at 6:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Daylight.
You're off at the seventh?
Yeah, it's a 7. I don't know why 6:30, 6:45, but I guess we're having it,
Say it's daylight time now, right?
you know.
Not standard.
Wait, does it change? DST, yes, that's
Yeah,
right.
now
My
it's-
apologies.
yeah.
Correct, thank
Yeah.
you. I don't want to miss this is a public meeting. We have 2 items on our agenda. The Director of Policy for Manhattan Borough President will present the VP's Borough President's mental health plan. Our main event will be a presentation on the opioid overdose prevention and naloxone. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly. From the New York State's Office of Addiction Services. We will limit our in-person participation to 25. With priority given to CB7 and members. We do not have any pending, or doesn't seem like we're gonna have any resolutions.
Okay. Kevin,
Yep, so for YEL, we don't have anything for the board this month because we squeezed so much into the board meeting last month.
you sure did.
Yeah, but we got it done.
Well, please.
But in April, at our YEL committee meeting on the 18th, we're going to have a presentation from the Goddard School. So thank you, Roberta. The Goddard, Riverside rather. So Roberta, thank you for setting that up.
I got it, Isaac, but.
Yes,
And that's where we're meeting, the next meeting.
exactly.
I can get it.
Kevin, I have a quick question.
Yeah,
Do you know if your May YEL meeting will be before or after the PEP vote for 145?
I'm gonna tell you,
You have
so
to figure out if parents.
our May YEL meeting is on the 16th of May.
Mhm. And I think the PEP vote is the 20th of May now or 24th?
Something like that.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
20 something.
Okay.
So our meeting's before the PEP
Yes, they have
vote.
time to.
But yeah, exactly.
Times I know what's really interesting about. Schools. Here, I heard about it through, I mean, I'd known about it for a while, but like having it, the resolution was fresh in my mind.
Yeah, I think that resolution was a very difficult one. That,
Yeah.
You threaded the needle very well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, budget and strategy.
So I attended the Department of City Planning's training session today. It looks like the questions will all be the same, but the way to input it will be a lot easier.
That would be wonderful.
Yes, and we are going to be able to so you cannot mold and you cannot italicize and you cannot do bullet points. But you can do a Word document and add it as a file, and supposedly they will then put it into the document. So we are going to try one first time and see if it works. I've also asked the committees for letters and photos, so if there's I'll just do parks because it's easier if there's a playground and the playground's a disaster and you can take a photo of the playground. Or if there's an inaccessible a public street corner that's, if we have a photo, we can put it in. It just makes it for the 10 people that actually read the document, it just makes it a little more interesting to read.
That probably is best for the capital projects. It's hard to think of expense projects. You could get a
It makes
picture.
sense, but for district needs, we can,
Yeah.
add stuff.
Okay,
That's that.
Picture's worth 1,000 words.
and we got our letter out, right?
The letter went out. On. Within 2 weeks of the date, we know for next year. So the other thing is. Alex and I are gonna, Alex Crawford and I are gonna update the database. And we'll set it up in such a way so that next year we can just load right into the letter. So we don't have to. It'll just be easier for the
Everybody.
office to do rather than the hours I spend putting it together.
Oh, we are one of a small handful of community boards that actually follow the rule and send a letter. So
And Board 6 did,
kudos to you.
Board 6 and our Board 2, but I think we're 2.
Okay. Transportation.
Yeah, we don't have any rezos, but we had a very long and detailed discussion and presentation of the issue of 20th precinct police officers' personal vehicles taking up many of our streets, double parked in places, parked at hydrants and what have you. We had the precinct come and respond to some of these. Steve Anderson and his people gave a very detailed presentation, and Mark and I are divvying up some of the blocks that they showed us where these are taking place. It has gotten better. If you've looked at the west side of Columbus between 81st and 82nd, that used to be always disabled vehicles or police officers' personal vehicles lining that block, narrowing Columbus by one full lane. That is not the case anymore, but they are parking in other places and they seem very willing to work with us. And so Mark and I are going to look at the blocks involved, divvying up amongst the committee members, and we will go out and inspect compared to the photos that were taken at the presentation. In addition to that, I gave an update on some MTA issues such as the suspension of the capital plan due to the delay in congestion pricing, which means quite a few important things are now on hold. Signals, new train cars, phase 2 of Second Avenue subway. There's just so much, some basic maintenance is even being suspended at the moment. Nothing that will imperil safety at this time, but we need to get this resolved as soon as possible.
The legal issues that are holding
Yes.
suggested present.
Yes.
Yeah. BCI.
We had 7 items on the agenda and they all passed unanimously. 2 of them did not vote for cause, and it's pretty easy meeting.
Now, I understand there are coming down the pike at you another batch of cannabis.
Alleged.
Yeah, and some of whom have not seemed to follow the.
And it's not, I'm not
norm of-
sure about this, we've had some emails around about, but I don't know what there was really to do about that if they get approved and granted their licenses
Without having a hearing.
without having board approval or even a hearing.
Yeah.
What's our recourse? I don't know that we
Yeah.
have any or even where to,
So we're trying to figure this out, and we'll, both Max and I will call it to the borough president's attention.
Do we have, we were aware that there's 6 licensees that are going to open.
was it, I thought it was 5, but
I think it's 6, but, and some came to us and some didn't, but do we have new applications that we might hear? Is that what I'm hearing, or?
No, sorry, just to interject, no new ones. We're talking about the 6 that are now confirmed openings, right? Yeah.
And on 72nd Street, which is what I reported on for a year or 2 now, is suspected it was a Dasney site. Now they finally put their signs up at the old Goodwill. And the place, I think, called A Little Bit Higher. That's the name of it. They certainly didn't come through to us at all. And yeah, I'm, as I mentioned the other night, I'm disgusted by the process.
Yeah, and your
My rant.
your rant was supported by Kathy Hochul in yesterday's New York Times when she said.
She went on her own rant.
She did, and she said that she suspects that there are people who, are getting their license because they know somebody at OCM rather than the way you're supposed to go through the channels. I mean, I felt particularly, not any more than you are, I'm sure, but for those people who don't know, the first cannabis place that is opening legally at 22 West 66th Street never came before us. We never vetted them. We did, I understand that you and Max met with somebody and Max said he was a nice guy, but we don't know anything about them, and it sort of makes us like idiots. Like, what are we doing? We have spent so much time on these cannabis applications, and then the first one to come along the pike, who are you? You don't know anything.
One thing I'll just add, I'm not going to identify for my own personal safety, is that I'm aware that one of the licenses that's been granted was granted to an owner that currently owns other illegal stores in the neighborhood. Not the licensee, the landlord.
unlicensed.
Unlicensed, illegal. Unlicensed and illegal. We're not talking about asylum seekers. We're talking about an illegal operation. And one of the licenses, again, I'm not talking about the applicant or the licensee. I'm saying the landlord was awarded a license in their building and they currently own other stores that have unlicensed and I'm gonna call
Well, I mean,
illegal
that-
shops.
To me, I mean,
And
look,
it's just
I get it.
hard to
You know,
track, but-
it's impossible to track, but from the landlord's perspective, they got, till the city decides they're gonna crack down on this, the landlords need to fill those spaces to collect rent, and I'm not saying what they're doing is right, they have a moral obligation to not do so, but they also have to pay their mortgages, and so it's a very fine line maybe from their eyes, I'm not saying they should be doing it, but there's nothing stopping them from doing that.
Well, the DA's office has been writing quite a number of letters to landlords, and that's one of the tools they have to essentially force a landlord to begin eviction proceedings once it's been determined that they have an illegal operation in their building.
Yeah, sounds.
So it's complicated, but it's a mess.
And
Okay.
I personally, just one more, I personally, again, I don't go into these places, other places, but I go to these places, and I don't ever really see them busy. There might be people in there, but I don't see them packed. And I often think a lot of these are fronts for something else. I don't have proof of that either. I'm just-
If we have the governor having sponsored a real careful review and audit, maybe
Let's hope.
we
Well,
also should let them understand our experience, and maybe that's where a letter would be useful, and so we will work on that.
Gail's been very public. It's been all over the news about the location that's diagonally across from her building. There were multiple violations and they did padlock the operation, and then the owner broke the padlock.
Yeah.
Right, and then they opened again. Then the sheriff's department came back and put a bigger padlock, and from what I could see today, it looked like they were open again. And I think it's driving, it's driving.
There's no padlock.
It's crazy. It's just crazy.
You think you saw that open today?
I am not sure, but it looked that way from a distance, but I don't know.
I feel like one problem is, of course, that they're illegal and unlicensed, but the other problem is also that a lot of them are very clearly marketing to younger kids,
Illegally,
the way, a lot of graffiti, a lot of like very kid friendly, like dummies, like, things that teenagers are just.
They're not even allowed to have colorful signs or colorful packaging. There's a whole set of laws with New York State that make the legal operations much more safe and secure in terms of where they store the product, safe, closed circuit, cameras. The legal operators, those stores are generally going to be safer, I think, and I am supportive of them. But yeah, the illegal operations, and I'm sorry, I keep calling them illegal because I don't know any other word to call them. We don't, well, I don't know. I mean, again, they're not licensed. Right, and what they're doing is illegally selling a product that they're not allowed to sell because that's against the law.
Right.
Against the law is illegal. But anyway,
so this is
but
just
where their money is going and, the lack of tax, all these things, it's just for all the wrong reasons. I think it's just not a good idea.
Nevertheless, we have 7 items, they all approved unanimously.
Yeah, the legal ones, yeah.
No, from the BCI meeting last week.
right. Okay.
Oh,
thank
yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
So this is, this may result in a letter or something that our board writes, but it's not anything that is before us for full board preservation.
We had first meeting, Natural History showed us their new roof tiles, which are the same as the old ones. And that didn't require a resolution. I just wanted to keep us abreast of that. Then we had 3 resolutions, one on 72nd Street, a rooftop addition, a tall building which you can't see from the street at all. Then we had an air conditioner up on West End Avenue and a new window on Central Park West.
Okay. Nothing earth shattering.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And Roberta,
She's here. Oh, sorry.
there you go. Just the senior
I'm
task
trying to
force.
get away from the noise.
Yeah, no, okay, I get it. I've blocked it out, but
Senior task force, we're just doing our regular monthly meeting.
Yeah.
We will plan some forums for the spring, but we don't have any.
On the public safety, I know you mentioned that you were gonna do, or the DA's office was gonna do a presentation on identity theft. I'd love to talk with you about that because I think that was one of the subject matters that was on our agenda to, on a continuing conversation. So it's super important for seniors, but
We're gonna talk about ways for seniors to stay safe. So
yes,
They have their own presentation.
right.
So can you look me in a look with that? Cause I learned a lot about identity theft,
Yeah.
working in tech and how scary it is. People
Oh.
post hundreds of thousands of dollars.
The commanding officers in this neighborhood actually said that on the grand larceny, it's one of the most prevalent issues because it's kind of invisible. And there are people, including people that I know and we all know, that have been ripped off to the tune of
Yeah.
thousands and hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars. It's happening, but you don't see a police car or you don't hear about it, but it's one of the biggest issues in our neighborhood.
Okay,